Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to the History of Video Games. My name is Wes, and I am here with Ben. Ben, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Wes?
I am doing pretty darn good. It's an interesting time, but it's been a good time. But do you want to get us started off with what you've been playing recently?
Yeah, sure. So I think, as you know, I have been pretty hard at work on the podcast the last couple of weeks.
Yes, yeah.
Getting ready for 77 has proven to be the hardest thing I've had to do for the podcast. I think I can say that. I covered over 1,200 games, and we're not going to be talking about all of them because that would be ridiculous. But I had to look at all of them, though, and figure out what we're going to be doing. So, yeah, that took a long time, and we only just finished 2 days ago.
Right, yeah.
Thankfully, you helped me, Wes. I want to thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Definitely helped out.
Glad to help.
But that's what I've been doing. I spent a long time on it, but I have had a little bit of time to play some games. I definitely want to talk about Kenshi for a little bit.
Oh, you got to talk about Kenshi.
Yeah, I bought that. You had bought it a long time ago, and I was thinking about what I wanted to play. I kind of want to play something sandboxy. I was actually looking to play a God game. I don't know if you know what they are, but kind of something like Civilization, but more like single player is kind of what I was looking for.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
You know, kind of like you're starting with like a small person or group of people and building up. And Kenshi is that, but it's not quite as, like, you're not going to have a town of 1,000 people eventually, you know. But Kenshi is an open kind of sandboxy game where you load in and it's like, you can do whatever you want. And then they don't tell you to do anything. And you're like, what do I do?
Right. Yeah. Sandbox in like the purest sense.
You're right. So I actually found it pretty difficult to enjoy and get into at the beginning because I just had no idea what I should do or what I could do. I had no idea any of the mechanics. Like, there's not like an encyclopedia like in the game or anything. I had to like go to the wiki page a couple times. And I hate doing that. So at first I was like, I don't know if I really like this. Luckily, I held out until I bought another follower for my party. So you start out with just one guy, and then you can hire other people to join your party. And I kind of put it off for a while because I wasn't sure if like they'd be in my party temporarily, if I had to like pay for them every week and I wouldn't be able to support that. You know, I just wasn't sure, but I finally tried it, and it's literally like you have a second main character that you can just hop into at any time and has all the same skill sets as your main character. And I was like, oh, I just like doubled what I could do, you know?
Right, yeah.
If before I was looking for like a level 1 creature to first because that's the only thing I could beat, it's like, well, I can beat a level 2 now, you know? that actually like opened up the amount of people I could attack like pretty dramatically. So it really helped, and that along with me deciding to go into the base building kind of aspect of it, which I love base building, that really sucked me in pretty hard. So it hasn't always been like I've had some headaches with the game, don't get me wrong, but it's a great game and I'm really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to playing some more. So I'll probably continue talking about this next time.
Yeah, which I'm excited to hear about because, as you mentioned, I want to say I started playing it either towards the end of college or right after.
I feel like you were playing it in college.
Yeah, and streamed it like 3 or 4 times right after college, I think, or one summer during. But it's a fantastic game, and it's definitely clunky, but one of those games where clunky is kind of its charm, and it's brutal as hell. Like, you get your arm chopped off, your arm's gone, unless you save scum, which I do all the time. But other than that,
yeah, I load a lot of saves, but
you got
I guess you could play Iron Man, right? But that would be really hard. It could be fun though.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to try out, but it's so punishing.
It's weird the fact that once you have another person in your party, your main character that you started the game with could die, and you could just continue the story as the rest of everybody.
Right, yeah, your main character loses like so much importance other than the fact that they probably have like more skills than whoever you recruit next. But only because you've been playing him for slightly longer.
Yeah, so it's a very unique and interesting game, and I highly recommend it to anybody who likes sandboxy type games, but just know that you have to like get into it for a little bit before it starts clicking. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. What have you been doing, Wes?
Well, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of good games coming out. As you mentioned, I did help you with the research, but I did in small doses, so I had a lot more free time recently. And two big releases. I don't think I'm going to talk about both of them today, but of course, Doom Eternal and Animal Crossing New Horizons both released on the same day, March 20th.
Mm-hmm.
So many good memes about crossovers between Animal Crossing characters and the Doom Slayer, who's the main character in Doom. But the one I wanted to talk about today is Animal Crossing. This is my first entry into the series. As a lot of you know, there's been like tons of Animal Crossing games, and it is like so good. I love it so much. It's
Nice.
super chill. It kind of like came out at, I feel like, the perfect time for a bunch of people being stuck inside their houses for quarantine kind of stuff, and you're just kind of escaping to your own private island. I think that's actually one of the taglines that they used to sell the game. And making your town, farming, growing different fruit trees. You get your friends together and they trade different, more rare fruits with you that grow on their island that don't grow on your island. And then you just spend the whole day like fishing and catching praying mantis and selling them for money. And, and buying bridges with that money, and then the process continues.
Wow, you can buy a bridge with grasshopper money.
Yeah, yeah. Grasshoppers actually aren't worth much. You gotta tarantulas are where it's at.
Oh,
But they can bite you and knock you out, which is like the biggest consequence in Animal Crossing New Horizons, because it's a very like they don't want it to have many consequences. So you just get like knocked out and you wake up back home, and then that's it. So you don't lose any inventory. It's nothing like that. Closest thing I've played to it before is probably Stardew, but even Stardew is like more hardcore, which is a weird thing to say about Stardew Valley than New Horizons.
It definitely feels like it is. Like, is there like a game clock in Stardew where you have to be home by a certain time, or else you like pass out and stuff? Like, I find sometimes that even that can be hardcore or something. I don't know.
It's pretty limiting, yeah. Like when you do that and you can't. I mean, the dungeoning was what I was thinking of because it's actual like combat, but yeah, also the fact that you have a harsh time limit. There's a sort of a soft time limit in a way in Animal Crossing, just because the main store where you sell everything closes at 10. So you can put stuff in their mailbox, but then you won't get any of that money until the next day.
Is this like real time or?
Yes, it's a real time game, which is really cool.
Okay.
And that's like I think that's like the whole big thing about Animal Crossing, or one of the many features that's like really the identity of the game, which I didn't realize before I got it. But so it's 10 o'clock real time. You pick your time zone and your hemisphere and all that. So like a lot of the game is making money so you can build stuff, so you can make money so you can build stuff. You know, that's kind of the gameplay loop, although of course it's a lot more fun than that sounds. So once you can't get money instantly, your inventory is just full of spiders you can't sell. So so at a certain point there's not much to do, but then there also are like unique fish that you can only catch during the nighttime, and same with bugs, and you can wish on stars to make like weird magical wands that I think just let you carry like 5 outfits on you at once, so you can change your outfit for any occasion. But it's good. I never realized how much I was into coordinating the outfits of my little character, how much I wanted to get flooring that matched the wallpaper I have in my house. It's made me realize I have an interior decorator inside me that I never knew about. But
time to get that house flipper game.
Yeah. I'll have to try that. This one's so cutesy though. It's a real fun time. I've been loving it. And
it seems like the kind of game you can just hop into and then hop out of in 10 minutes if you need to, you know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Other than the fact that the saving process takes a while, which bummed me out a bit, but it's not really that bad. I mean, but yeah, you just go in, like do a couple things. And there's also a lot of cool reasons to like play at different times of the day, which is nice. Like you see different bugs in the morning, then you do at lunch, and then you do at night. Yeah, so it's just got a lot of good stuff going to it. I've been playing it like constantly and probably will continue to play it for a while.
Nice. Good. I'm glad you're liking it.
Yeah. It's a real good time.
I'll definitely pick it up sometime. I think it's like the perfect game to be on a Switch too. Like if it was on PlayStation, I'd be like, who cares, you know? I don't know. It just feels like it was kind of meant for like a Switch experience.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that because I don't really play handheld much, or I didn't before. But now that I have this, it's like I'll play it on TV, but then my brother wants to watch TV, and it's like, okay, handheld's like just as good for Animal Crossing. It works perfectly with that.
Right. Cool. So why don't we move into our special topic, Wes? Because we got a big one, probably one of our favorites to do ever.
Absolutely.
So we're starting the new year, 77, and we'll talk about that after this part. But first, we wanted to kind of recap 76 and talk about our favorite games that came out, maybe our not favorite game that came out, and just kind of highlight what a road it's been. Because just to put things into perspective, like before 76, console games were like black and white Pong games, right? And now I feel like they can do basically anything, especially with the Fairchild out, you know.
Right. It's a whole new world open to us at the end of 76 and as we went through that. And there was just a lot of change in 76, a lot of exciting change. So a lot of fun stuff to look back on.
Yeah. I think if I had to sum up 76 as like one achievement, I think color graphics are really becoming like normal now. And if it's not color, it's like, what are you doing? Or
Right.
at least some sort of overlay or something. So to me, like that's a major advancement in just 1 year. But obviously, there's been tons of advancements that we've talked about throughout the episodes. And I thought, why don't we start by talking about our least favorite game, Wes? I think that might be the best.
All right, that sounds good to me. Did you want to start this one off, or do you want to try to guess what my least favorite game is?
It's kind of hard for me to guess.
I could just go straight into it too.
I have one guess. I'm gonna guess The Little Professor, but I could be wrong about this. But I'm gonna guess that.
So I really wanted to put Little Professor, but I felt like I reamed on it so much when I reviewed it that I should pick something else as my least favorite. And also, since I was back and forth about how much of a game it really was, I was like, I think there's other least favorite games I could highlight.
Right. So what did you pick then?
So I did a deep dive, one that I forgot about. And then when I read about it, I was like, yeah, this did kind of suck. And that was Hexpawn from Skelby's first book of computer games.
Hexpawn. That's just 3 pawns, right, on either side?
3 pawns versus 3 pawns on a 3x3 board. And I don't know, it just felt like tic-tac-toe to me, which, as we've discussed, I mean, we both like the idea of tic-tac-toe and understand its ubiquity and cultural importance, but we don't really like it as a game per se.
Yeah, not unless there's like a story mode or something that comes later.
Right. But just like in the game itself, because there's an algorithm, once you know it, every game ends in a stalemate if you're doing like even players or whatever.
Right.
Or if there's a first turn, second turn advantage or whatever, then that person always wins. But this one, maybe because I'm more familiar with a pawn's move and kind of like chess than I was with tic-tac-toe, it just felt like so much easier for me to be like, okay, I can see the 3 possible turns that we each need to take to get to a stalemate. And unless someone just doesn't do the most obvious move, it's always stalemate. Especially because it's pawns, and like the first person, they have 3 moves. They can move any of their pawns forward 1 space. The other person only has 1 move. They have to take that pawn, or else they instantly lose, because if they don't take the pawn, then the first player just on their next turn takes a pawn in the back line and then they win, because you only have to get, I think, 1 to the back line to win.
Nice.
It just, yeah, the more I looked at it, I was like, this isn't a great game. I mean, I'm appreciative of all the games that I don't enjoy playing, but they're just like, hey, look, computers can do this. Because this was, Hexpawn was a case where it was you playing against a computer. But even for this one, I mean, that's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my least favorite. Not interesting, not fun for me, at least. Sorry, Hexpawn. That's all I gotta say.
Well, let's pray it doesn't come out on consoles later or something.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I was watching a video of it, and I think it might.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good contender.
Yeah.
I have no idea, but I think it's probably, we might see it again.
Stay tuned for that Apple II Hexpawn that comes out, something ridiculous like 80, I think, 1980. But
right.
So yours, right. I don't think I have a guess for either. So why don't you lay it on me? I'm ready to hear it.
Well, I kind of almost completely forgot about this. So maybe that's why you don't remember, but I picked the game Tracer as my worst game of 76. And this is a light gun game by Sega that was. I feel like this one's even more worse than yours, Wes. I mean, yours basically had no gameplay, but I feel like that one was like a basic computer game, right? It wasn't meant to be like crazy. Like this is an arcade cabinet. Sega was trying to push, you know? And oh my god, it's a light gun game that's in black and white, and the graphics are so bad. I had no idea what I was looking at. I remember distinctly these bug-looking shapes, which didn't make any sense to me because the rest of the game is kind of military themed. And then I remember one of the other sprites that came up, I absolutely had no idea what it was. I didn't even try to think of what it was just because it looked like nothing.
Right.
And I was like, what is this? Black and white. It's a 2-player light gun game, and it's weird because basically what I think happened was they had Bullet Mark, which was a 75 machine. And then that one, the guns were very far away from the cabinet. It was kind of like 2 pieces. And they're like, well, we should probably, scrunch this together so that, it saves some space for the arcade people and sell that in the next year later. And it was so bad because you had just done a light game yourself. You had rated one like the episode before.
Right.
And it was 1,000 times better than this.
Right. Attack by Taito, right?
Yeah, Attack. Which was in color and had all this cool stuff going on. And this was just like, oh my god. I was like, I'd rather play the light gun games from the Odyssey, which came out in 72, It was not good.
Yes.
It was terrible. So, yeah, I'm going to say that's my worst for 76.
Wow. Yeah, that's a doozy. I'd almost forgot about that, but as soon as you mentioned the bug-shaped sprite, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember him talking about this one.
Yep. All right, so let's move into the good stuff now.
Oh yeah.
I think so. Normally we do the top 3 games of the year. I think because consoles are always like a step behind, I thought maybe we should do like our favorite console of the year too, to give them a shot at something. So I don't know. Do you want to go first, Wes, or do you want to guess mine first?
I'll go first with mine. So do you want me to just get straight into it?
Let me think. I kind of want to guess.
It was tough. I'll tell you that. It was actually kind of tough for me to make this decision.
I'm going to guess The Fairchild, but I could be wrong.
You are correct. The Fairchild Channel F. The reason I picked this, I mean, it's pretty obvious. I felt like I was going to go for Super Pong because I love Super Pong, as we've said. But this, just for the innovation it made with the cartridge gaming, and really one of the big things that made me like this one so much is the fact that it was bringing back those just like weird games that made me think of like early Odyssey games, where it's like, okay, this game might not be the best, but it's not Pong. It's something we haven't seen before. It's like totally out there, like with their tank game, which granted wasn't very good, or like the shooting gallery game, which was pretty cool because of the ricochet that it had.
Mm-hmm. And Blackjack, which I thought was a pretty well done one by them.
Yeah. The way that they used the colors in Blackjack, and really, I mean, not all of it looked great, definitely. And the sounds and controller were definitely pretty weird. As we mentioned, it's sort of like the strange Bop It thing that had like 80 inputs.
Yep.
But it still did a lot of really cool stuff. And it is the first Gen 2 console, which also it's so good to be in Gen 2. I don't really want to look back, although I know we're about to the Gen 1 stuff again. But yeah, not too much more I could say about it other than that. It's just a really good console and made a lot of cool innovations.
Yeah, it had a pretty strong launch lineup, I think. Really showcasing all it could do, which is great. So for me, do you have any guesses for me, Wes?
I forget the exact name of it, but I think it's the Telco Telstar.
No, it's not the Telco. That was an AY38500 chip, Wes.
Oh, was it? Okay, never mind then.
I did have one that I really liked called the Adversary 370. Maybe that's what you're thinking.
That could be.
It was one of the first ones that had true color and it looked amazing, but I didn't pick that one. Instead, I picked one that you did, Wes, the Odyssey 500. And,
yeah.
I don't know why this one stuck to me. I feel like, you didn't have as good of experience as I did, but I just remember that being one of the few consoles I saw in my research of 76 that I knew we wouldn't get to until the very end, and I was just waiting for it. And there's something about how it had the sprites and had that in combination with the English, which was still there. It felt like, the next version of Magnavox Odyssey. And I was I don't know, it brought back something about the original Odyssey that was like, I feel like that is still in here, the soul is still in there. So yeah, I don't know why, I just really like that one, and something about it just connected with me, especially seeing the sprites. They're in full color. I mean, it's just Pong games, but it just felt like if I had to imagine Pong 2.0, like 1.0 is that black and white version in 75, 76 was in color with sprites, and that's what the
Right.
Odyssey 500 was. So yeah, it just kind of represented all the innovations I think we saw throughout the year. So that's why I picked that one.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, I mean, just sprites especially, we're not seeing many like applied to the old Pong games in '76. So the fact that they did that was really cool, and also it was a pretty. I mean, it played pretty well as far as I remember.
Yeah, yeah, I like that they still had the English, which was really cool, and yeah, it just felt like that next step for them.
Right.
So we'll see how far that takes them. But let's move on to our favorite games now. They could be anything, including consoles, but they're probably not consoles.
Probably not, no.
Any guesses for me, Wes? Why don't I start this time?
Oh man, I was looking through it, and there was a lot of good stuff.
There's a lot. Right. I had to really write them all down. I have like a list of 15 that I want to mention right before the end. But
yeah. Well, okay. I think somewhere in there is going to be Blockade by Gremlin.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to go for all three? Is that where I'm looking at now?
Yeah. Why don't you go for all three?
I think Le Mans was also one. Le Mans.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scrolling through the list now because I'm forgetting which ones you took a look at, and also if any of the ones I did would have really stood out to you. Oh, and Death Race, of course. I feel like that's got to be in there somewhere, at least mentioned. But
yeah,
that's what I'll go with for now.
We'll see if you're right. We'll see if you're right. I'm going to start with my number 3, and this is one that you didn't say, Wes, but I've been talking it up all year, I feel like, and that's Stunt Cycle, one of the first games I rated of the year, and it's just such a good game because it's like this daredevil motorcycle game where you're jumping over these buses, and every time you jump over one, the amount of buses you have to jump over gets increased by one, and it goes all the way up to like 27 buses or something. But I just really like this one because the gameplay is simple. It feels like it's right on the edge of like doing tricks, and there's a whole I feel genre of trick-based games.
Right.
So and it's all about controlling your acceleration and not going too fast because you can like tip over your guy because he starts doing a wheelie once you go really fast, and it just felt like a Trials game.
Yeah, and I think we mentioned that during your review as well, that it's sort of like Genesis of the Trials kind of type game.
I 100% think so, and to have it all the way back in 76, it wasn't in color, but it did have some really nice sprites and animation too, and you really felt like you were that daredevil character going through, and it did have some overlays that kind of make the screen feel like more congruent between what was happening on the screen, but I think they did a really good job. So I don't know, something about the way that character looked and the way he made me feel when I played it, I was just like, this is a fun game, and the character is like really rememberable for me. So I don't know, I was like, this deserves to be up there.
Just shows how much if you get the theming right, like that really can carry a game a lot.
Yeah, I think so. If you make a very memorable character, and if you focus on the gameplay, because that's one, the graphics weren't great, but the gameplay was really, really good, and I found myself playing it more than I needed to rate the game, which is always like, okay, this is a good one.
That's always a good sign.
All right, for you, Wes, I've got no clue, honestly. It could be a ton of different things.
I didn't have any clue when I was going through it either, and I don't even know if my order is accurate, but I do have 3 games that I definitely really love on here.
So one I really hope is on there. I kind of don't think it's going to be on there, but there's always like one computer game that you play that I'm like, I kind of wanted to play that.
Yeah.
And this time I think it's Targ. I hope Targ is on there, but I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm going with Targ. I'm going to go Night Driver.
Okay.
And Breakout. I don't know. Those are my 3.
Ooh, Man, I'm just gonna say you did a pretty good job, but
Yes.
disappoint you right off the bat. As much as I was considering Targ, I did not put it on my list.
Oh, well, I kind of thought that was a long shot, but
Yeah,
of all the computer games you played this time, I think that one probably had the best chance of being in, if I had to guess.
it was. I mean, Targ was great, but so I'm not fanboying over Targ and talking about the ones I actually put over my list. Number 3 that I had was Breakout by Atari.
Nice.
You got that one right. It's definitely nostalgia's influencing me on this one because
Mm-hmm.
of all these old games that kind of led to like genres of games that are still persisting today. The brick breaking kind of game, for whatever reason, is the one that, like, in junior high and high school, I played tons of the online versions of.
Right.
So this being like the first, basically, sorry, clean sweep by Ramtech version of this kind of game, it just holds a special place in my heart. It's really tough compared to the other ones because, of course, the ones you play now, you unlock like super triple bouncy balls and like
Right.
lasers that you shoot out of your paddle, which is cool. But this has a certain classic feel to it, and really just something about the different colored lines of bricks, I feel like, is what really sells me on it.
And it had a bunch of interesting mechanics where if you got to like the last row early, it would like there was some strategy of how to clear the bricks too.
Yeah, exactly. Because the paddle size decrease, and I think the speed of the ball also when you hit that last row, and the different points that you could get from the different rows. So like, yeah, there's a lot going on with it for such like a simple concept of game, and it kind of makes sense why it's such like an enduring genre or like type of game that even though it's online games that tons of people might not really play now, you still see it all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, why don't you get straight into your number 2? I think I can't rank yours. I already threw out my general guesses, but
Yeah, this one maybe surprise you again. I don't know, but I stole it from one of the games you played. This next one, I'm picking Laser Command,
oh, okay,
the tank
nice.
game. I had to throw in another Meadows Games, but yeah, a tank game by Meadows Games, and they're such like geniuses of how to take a game that we already know and love and just like take it to that next level.
Oh yeah,
So this is a tank game where you can hop out of the tank and just hop in a different tank. The map is full of tanks, and the game's only over when all of the tanks on the screen are destroyed. So it was just like an amazing idea where they kind of like physicalized what lives were. You know what I mean? Like before you had like a tank, 3 lives, and you see the number go down. But this is like there's 3 tanks on the screen.
right.
I can see how many that is, and it feels like I can connect to it more. And I thought the whole idea of jumping out of the tank was such a unique one, and really just opened up so many different avenues of play that I was like, okay, this is a great looking game. By Meadows Games, had a lot of character, had such unique gameplay to it. I was like, I can't not include this. I just like it, and even like how the lasers looked on the screen because they weren't just tanks; they were like laser tanks.
Oh
I
yeah,
thought that was so cool. They kind of like built up square after square after square. It was just like a really unique one that I don't think I've seen anybody else get close to. That kind of style of game. So yeah.
absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned it because right before recording, I told you, okay, I picked my top 3, but then I have one that was so close, and I really wanted to put it up there, and that was Laser Command for me.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And the exact same reasons you mentioned. One of the things that I love the most is how they, for the mechanic of jumping out of your tank and controlling the pilot when you go to another tank, they just had like a blinking light bulb or like a series of light bulbs behind the screen. So like where they couldn't do something with digital display elements, they found a way to just say like, well, what if we put something back there that moves along with your character, so it's actually combining sort of these analog and digital visual elements to make a whole graphical display better.
Yeah, and with all of that, it was still like super intuitive, with how it worked.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So super glad you mentioned that. That was one of my favorite ones, but didn't make the top 3.
Oh, now I'm very curious what made it. So why don't you continue now, Wes? What's your number 2?
Well, number 2 will give you the second guess that you got correct. Night Driver by Atari.
All right.
I think you could tell when I was talking about this game, and even when I looked back at my ratings before this episode to see what I thought of this game, it had like paragraphs and paragraphs that I wrote about it. It's a weird thing because if you look at it on like a still screen, you see a picture of it, you're like, man, this is the most boring thing I've ever seen. All black. If you don't have the overlay, there's no car, even though it's a racing game. And there's just like these little white dots for the side of the road to indicate that. So while visually it's pretty simple, and the sounds, even though they're really cool sounds, are also a little annoying sometimes, it's just so fun to play. It's not really the first game of its kind, because of course Nürburgring is what inspired it, but this version just felt super playable, a lot of fun. Like you said previously, it's one of the games that even after rating, I kept playing for a little bit, so that's always a good sign of, I mean, we're playing things from 1976. They're not exactly the most up-to-date games, but if we still have a good time with them, that means they did a pretty dang good job. The movement made sense and really felt like you knew where you were. I was able to play it pretty well, even though I didn't have an overlay, so I didn't really know where my car was. And it felt like you were going super fast, which was always really good, even though there wasn't really much scenery for context, just the things on the side of the road. And even though the sounds, like I mentioned, were kind of annoying, there were also really novel sounds, like the tire squeal kind of sound and the engine sound, and even the crash sound were pretty unique. So even though visually there wasn't a lot going on, it was super good. I love Night Driver.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I totally understand that. So why don't I move on to my final, though?
Oh, absolutely.
I want to give out some honorable mentions before I say it. Obviously, Death Race, honorable mention. The gameplay is what didn't make it on the list for me, because really you're just kind of, it's like Demolition Derby, and they just changed the sprites, but the game looks so cool. The cabinet is like the one to get. I'd put it right up there with Maneater as my favorite cabinets that we've seen so far. So, yeah, I have to give an honorable shout out to that. Breakout, obviously. I want to give a shout out to Cops and Robbers, which I thought was a pretty interesting shooting one.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
The baseball games, even though they're super complicated and where they were in the timeline, like Fly Ball and Tornado Baseball, they were like really good. And some of the driving ones, like Sprint 2, which I know you mentioned in Le Mans or however you say it, but all of those weren't as good as the one that you played and you just talked about, Wes. Night Driver, my number one. There's something so modern about Night Driver. It just feels like, something that we're very familiar with, and it's by far, I think, the biggest innovation in racing since Speed Race came out with the first scrolling graphics. So I can't wait to see what version 2.0 of that looks like. But if that hadn't come out, who knows how long it would have taken for racing games to find, the way to do it. Because that's the way to do it. You feel like you're going so fast in it, and yet you know what's coming up, and you can turn, and you can. I don't know if you could drift in that. I don't remember, but
it makes a drifting sound. I don't know. You sort of can, yeah. If you're going fast enough when you go around a turn, I mean, the tires squeal the whole way, and you're sort of like flying around the corner. It feels great.
Yeah, there's something about how it does speed, and with that, how do you have speed and have turns come up and be able to see those turns ahead of time? It figured that out, with the isometric kind of behind the camera view that it had, or a first person view or whatever it was. But I mean, what more can I say? It's just a great racing game and was my favorite game of all last year.
Wow, and that's quite high praise.
Oh yeah. No, I've got no clue what yours is, Wes. I'm gonna guess maybe Blockade, since we haven't talked about it yet, but
okay,
I have no clue.
Well, let me double check my dates before I reveal, because I thought this would at least be in your peripheral vision. But no, okay, it's right. So I'll give you a hint as I'm talking about it. This is one, and when I said at the very beginning, I'm not sure if the order of mine is exactly correct, but they're all favorite games of mine. This one might be up in the category as being one of the most important, even if it wasn't one of my personal favorites. And so I put number one, Colossal Cave Adventure by William Crowther.
Ooh. Oh, I didn't think you'd do that, because I know you had some headaches with it.
I did, but I wanted to give it some recognition at least, even though I didn't have the best time playing it. There's just something so awesome about the way that it built the world and the very specific puzzles that you had to solve during it. And just like the total concept of the game, I thought was fantastic. There's tons of unique scenarios that you're forced into, and there's some fun fantasy elements, like the giant snake and throwing the bird at it. And it's all wrapped in sort of the classic text adventure style. So even though I didn't play a ton of text adventures when I was younger, it still has this like super nostalgic feel of like anytime you see something pop up on screen and it says, there's a forest to your west, there's a house north, and then there's something else to your east. Which direction do you proceed? Like that whole format is just brilliant. And this being like such a historically important one, it's recognized for whatever reason, the timing or the popularity that it got, but for being like this massively important game, I really wanted to throw it in there, even though I did not get very far in the game. But I just think it's a good example of how to build a massive world when computers didn't have the power at the time to visually represent that massive world.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's such a good pick. And like you were kind of alluding to, I think it really was the father of the whole text-based adventure game. Like the whole genre, like it can all be traced down to this one game.
Right.
And I even know, because I've done all the 77 research, there are so many people, maybe not as many of those games will come out this year because they're being developed right now, but there's so many games that are going to be started development that are basically clones of that. And it's all because they saw that game and they're like, this is amazing. You know, I'm going to put my spin to it. I'm going to make it sci-fi. I'm going to do whatever. But
right.
It all comes back to that. And then that's that next generation that we're going to get, 77 and 78 kind of coming in. They're the ones that everybody knows today and, you know, catapulted the genre up until its peak popularity. So it all kind of comes down to this.
Yeah, it's
and there's
crazy.
A good reason.
You can see it just from like that brief scenario described of the directions. That hasn't changed through like any text game, and it started with this one. It's crazy to think. So thought I definitely had to throw it on the list somewhere.
Even stuff like I remember a couple episodes ago I was talking about a chess game I had played, and it's a chess game, but there's a story mode, and the story mode is very much text adventure. You know, you kind of like there's a little animation of you like riding a horse, and it goes up to a castle, and then it like describes in text what you're seeing, and you're like, okay, that's basically what this game was.
Right. Yeah.
You can't pick up anything in chess, but you get quests and stuff, so it all kind of goes back to Colossal Cave Adventure. Well, that's a good pick, Wes. I did not think you'd pick it, but I'm glad you did.
Oh, thank you. Well, good. I'm glad to both have surprised you and represented a game that deserved being recognized.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I think with that, let's take a break and hop in the timeline.
All right. Let's go straight into 77.
Hello and welcome back to the history of video games. We are going to jump into 77 games, but first, I have to do this. I feel like I have to do this every time we do a new year. I want to talk about how the research process went, what games were included, what games were not, just in case people aren't sure or didn't catch those other episodes, but it's kind of more of the same. I did expand it a little bit. So, number one thing, no electromechanical games. We do sometimes cover like hybrids that they do come up, and if I see an electromechanical game that I think is particularly relevant to video games, I might say something, but for the most part, no electromechanical games are included in this list. No calculator games. This is one that we added last year just because I saw a bunch and there's no calculator emulators or like videos of the game, so I was like, well, I could just mention a bunch of random games for random calculators, but I don't really have any idea what they are.
Right.
And a lot of it's like tic-tac-toe and hangman and stuff, so it's not really worth talking about, I don't think. So calculator games, no ports of games that we've already covered. So we're going to be covering a lot of new computers this year. But if I see like tic-tac-toe was released for them, I'm like, who cares? You know, we've already seen tic-tac-toe on a computer. Unless I find out tic-tac-toe was in color or did something else original and new, I'm just not going to even mention it. And then finally, no one-source games. This is probably the biggest one that removed the most of my list, because there's a lot of like games that came out, and we know for a fact they came out, but there's also a lot of games that we only have one person's word for, and that's just not good enough in my opinion. So unless I find two people's words on it, or from different sources, or some sort of hard concrete evidence that something existed, I'm just not going to include it. I should say there's one other thing. Prototypes I don't usually include. Sometimes I'll include them, especially if they're by big companies like Atari. But if I know a game, maybe like we have evidence that a game came out, but it was never sold or something, like they made one or something like that, unless it's particularly relevant to history, we're not going to include that because nobody could buy it. So I think that'll be it, though. That's kind of like how I did the research. Everything else was open. It's usually divided into 3 categories for us: consoles, computers, and arcade machines, and I like how we do that. So that was kind of the main focus. But starting off today, it's the first episode of 77, so obviously we have a couple 76 retcons that I missed in the last research that came up this time for one reason or another. So I thought, we should probably do these first. There's not that many. There's only 2 here, but one of them's kind of big, I guess. The Cromemco Dazzler. I hope I'm saying that right. Which was the first ever commercial color graphics card for a computer. So basically, all it did was allow some nice computer color graphics to be on different computers. I think the one that it was meant for was the Altair 8800 was the first one.
Yeah, and it could also run with the Zilog Z80 microprocessor, and I think with a TV screen, if it could do color. Right. But, I mean, there were some computers that had to be powering that as well.
Right. And with this release, they released a couple, we'll call them games. Some of them I don't think are really games, but some of them are. So we'll cover them right now. Let's get into it, Wes. The first one here, Dazzle Writer for the Cromemco Dazzler, which, again, was released sometime in 76. I want to say around maybe August 76. Dazzle Writer is basically allowed the computer to use a stylized version of alphanumerical symbols. I don't really know why you would want to do that or need to do that, but if you wanted to read a small poem and have it look nice, you could do that, I guess. So
there you go.
You can just write sentences is essentially the first game, which is obviously not a game, but we want to mention it because it's the first thing that the Cromemco could do. So,
and then the next one was the Dazzlemation. This one isn't really a game either, but it's basically just you run the program and it plays an animation that has been predetermined. As far as I know, people could make their own animations and upload them if you had the coding prowess to be able to do that. But one of the ones that a lot of people know about and I think came stock with the machine was called Pink Martini, or Magenta Martini, and it was written by Steve Dompier, a name that we've heard before, and it's just somebody pouring some pink liquid into a martini glass over and over again.
Yeah. And then we're going to move on to the actual real reason why we're covering this, because it's a real game. Space War. It's a game we've seen before, way back in 71? Space War came out, I want to say 72, something like that.
Yeah.
But we haven't really seen it since. I don't know why, but because they made it for arcade machines back then. Maybe there's a patent on it or something, but yeah, a Space War game on computers, which is really cool. Unfortunately, we couldn't find any video or emulation for this, or at least the emulation I couldn't get it running because you have to be big brain to get it running. But it's a Space War game, which is, if you guys don't remember, it's kind of like 2 spaceships on the screen. They're kind of floating around in this weird gravity thing, and you're just trying to shoot each other and dodge the sun in the middle, because that will blow you up, I think.
Something like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And this one, weirdly enough, I've only ever seen, there's a couple of pictures of it, and all of those pictures are in black and white. So even though this was meant for color graphics card chip thing, Space War, I think, was in black and white. So kind of weird.
Yeah, because that would really be a defining feature if it was color on this version.
Which I don't even know what the color they would do in space. They had to color the spaceships, I guess.
Make it all pink. Who knows? Yeah. So next up we have Tic-Tac-Toe, just a classic version of that. I think it was in color, but
I think you're right.
Just X is one color, O is the other color, and then the grid was either the same color as one of those or a totally different color. So visually slightly interesting, but still just Tic-Tac-Toe.
Yep. afterwards, we got another game that's not a game, Kaleidoscope. This is actually one of the only ones on this list that you can find good videos for on YouTube. So I highly recommend it. It actually looks pretty cool. It's like a weird trippy screensaver, it looks like. Again, I don't really know what the purpose is of something like this, but I guess if you wanted to, maybe back then, like someone was like loaded up this weird Kaleidoscope program. They're like, isn't this amazing? And they just talked about that for an hour. I don't know, but
yeah, good conversation starter. Keep it going in the background in front of your fireplace.
Yeah, but since you had to like kind of code this stuff yourself, I kind of don't think it'd be worth it.
Right.
I don't know, my opinion. But yeah, so that one, another not a game, but cool color patterns. It is in color, so that's cool for computers. So that's nice.
And then the last one that we have here is actually kind of similar to Kaleidoscope. It's a version of the Game of Life, which John Conway, I believe that's his name, the person who originally made it. And this is sort of similar because Game of Life kind of has a predetermined way of making patterns based off of a set of rules, basically. But these were sort of different multicolored patterns that showed up. So it sort of just made these automated Game of Life based patterns on your screen.
In color, which is awesome.
In color.
So yeah, that'll do it for the Cromemco Dazzler for right now, at least. I think they're going to release stuff in 77, which we'll cover, but those ones we know came out in 76. Sorry we missed them, but it happens.
And then just one more quick retcon that we missed in 76. This is a game called Galaxy by Skelby Computer Consulting Incorporated. And this basically just looks like it was a clone or a slight variation of Super Star Trek.
Yeah, so not, we didn't need to say that, but nothing important. I think the Cromemco is actually a little bit important because it had color graphics and did some cool things on computer, but Skelby, what is he doing?
Just throwing it in there.
And that's going to move us into actually 77 stuff now. I want to mention, first of all, Wes and I are only going to be rating one game this episode because we have a lot of stuff we want to talk about that are just honorable mentions and we didn't feel the need to rate them. So we're kind of getting through like the bad stuff here at the beginning, I'd say. So we wanted to speed that up a bit. And we knew we'd talk for a while in the beginning. So we're only going to review one, and we're going to start with consoles that had chips that we've already looked at, essentially. That had chips that came out in 76. So I want to quickly mention I found two news sources this year that had a lot of these consoles on it that, because they were new sources, I didn't really trust them that much, and a lot of consoles I only found on one of these two sources, so I was like, I didn't really include them, but I wanted to list the source in case people wanted to go and check it out themselves. One is for Japanese consoles, and it's called jvg.jp. So jvg.jp, it's a Japanese kind of website, but it's in English for the most part. And it's just like lists and lists and lists of Japanese consoles that I've never seen anywhere else. And it's really weird too, because for all of them, they have a picture, a single picture, but sometimes a picture is like a cardboard box with the name on it. And you're like, is there anything inside that box?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not. But, they had some on there that I saw with other sources. So I was like, maybe this is trustworthy. The other one, I definitely feel like is going to be on my kind of trustworthy list next time. And that's 20th centuryvideogames.com. That's 20th century. That's 20th centuryvideogames.com. And they have a ton of Pong consoles on there. And I actually used it fairly often in my research because they have like one or two pictures of all the consoles. They don't really have a lot of good information, but they have one or two pictures of all the consoles on there, including like really obscure ones. So if I found like a console and it wasn't on this list, I was like, okay, well, it probably doesn't exist then.
Right. Yeah.
They also have a special page for Spanish Pong clone consoles that came out in Spain. And that one had a lot on it that I hadn't seen anywhere else. So I kind of wanted to mention it because of that. If you want to see Spanish consoles, check out this website. They have a lot that we might not really cover because I haven't seen them anywhere else. But I trust this website a lot more than the other one. So yeah, just wanted to mention those two. But let's get into it now. Let's start with the one, the only Wes, the AY3 8500.
Oh, I can't wait.
I basically wanted to do all these right at the beginning because I don't want to talk about this console anymore. We rated it like 4 times now. But there's a couple important ones that came out in 77. I have to start with the saddest entry of the whole year, I think. So the Odyssey 500, my favorite console of last year, Wes. What did Magnavox decide to do next? Well, they came out with the Odyssey 2000 and then the 3000. And both of those were AY38500 chips!
How could they do it?
What are you doing? I don't understand. They had such a good formula there. It was in color. It had sprites. I just needed some more games and it would have been like perfect. And instead they go back to this? Like, why? This is what they came out with the Odyssey 300. So why would you, a year later, publish a console called the 2000 and have the exact same games in black and white and stuff? I don't understand.
Yeah, that's a bold move, to say the least.
Yeah, and they came out with it twice. I'm guessing one of them maybe had a light gun. They both probably actually were in color, but still, it's like 4-pawn games. It's like, why?
Right.
I don't understand. No sprites. All the characters gone. I don't even know if they had English on them. I couldn't look. After I found out what chip it used, I was like, I can't look at this anymore. But that's their next two entries, and that's really sad.
Not great.
I wanted to mention the TV scoreboard model 60, 30, 54, 56, 60, 9001, all by Radio Shack, which I thought was an interesting entry. Radio Shack making 4 consoles with the same chip in 1 year. What could go wrong? The TV Tron by Binatone. Binatone is one that we checked out last year, so I wanted to mention they are still doing this. The TVG 102, 201, 202, 204, and 621, and 721. That's what? 6 consoles? All right. By a company called Conic, which is one of the bigger companies. But can you imagine this? 6 consoles in 1 year, and they're all the same 4 to 6 games. Why?
Gotta collect them all.
What were they thinking? I want to mention some of the other big companies that we've covered before. Sears, which does a lot of the Atari stuff. They came out with 3 consoles that are 8500 ones. Videomaster, they came out with the All-Star. We've covered old Videomaster stuff. They were one of the very early console manufacturers, and they're just giving up. I thought this one was funny. The Sportstron TV game Coca-Cola edition by Fuji, which I guess was a Japanese release. 2 Wonder Wizard games, which the Wonder Wizard was one of the ones I covered, I think last episode, right? So they're still doing stuff. The Honeybell, which I talked about last episode. What else? The S4000 by Kmart, and also Colco. They came out with the Telstar Ranger, Alpha, Europe, and Regent. And all of those are AY38500. I mean, this is the company that started it all. You know, they came out with the Telstar, and they're like, "What's the good follow-up? Let's release the same thing 4 times next year." I don't understand it. And then finally, I wanted to cover the Playatronic by Zanussi, which I don't know if you remember, Wes. Way back, we did the Pingatronic.
Oh yeah.
But they came out there. The only other one that they ever released was the Playatronic, and it was, of course, AY38500. So,
wonder why they didn't release anything else.
Yeah, I think they went out of business. But yeah, I don't like. There's so many question marks about what the hell people are thinking about this year. But yeah, so those are all AY38500. There's one more I wanted to talk about quick. The Supercolor 8200 TS by Grundig, and this was a weird one because it was installed inside of a TV. So you bought a TV and inside of it had an AY38500 chip with the games. It was like right below the channel select. There was just like these detachable controllers that could just pop right out of the TV.
Right.
It was weird that someone would like, can you imagine like looking at a bunch of TVs and be like, yeah, but this one has 4 video games installed on it.
Right.
And we jacked up the price tremendously. You're like, oh, wow.
Yeah, it's an all-in-one deal, although I'm sure it was like very expensive.
Yeah. But I thought that one was interesting. But let's get out of AY38500 land for the final time, Wes. Take us out. What else we got?
So we're going to take a look at some more of the popular chips and that were made that weren't the AY38500, thankfully, but still just kind of that whole mass-produced chip in a console sort of feel. So the next one we're taking a look at is the MPS 7600-001, which was the chip that was used in the Name of the Game, which we talked about last episode.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a bunch of different ones that came out using this chip, but just to highlight some of them, we had the TV scoreboard model 60-3057, which was a Radio Shack version on this chip. We also had the Video Sports VS7 by Venture Electronics, and we had the SC8000 by Kmart.
What are you doing, Kmart? Yeah. I want to mention, by the way, we are just selecting some of the more interesting ones from this list. The list is really hundreds of games long. I can't stress this enough. It's literally hundreds and hundreds of these consoles. And I'm going to put up the full list online, but we're just not going to talk about the full list because that would literally take an hour.
You don't want to hear that. Trust us.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that. So just check out our website. The full list will be there. So moving on from the MPS 7600, there's also the MPS 7601, which we haven't seen yet, but it's just a PAL version, which is the Europe version of the name of the game chip that was just talked about. As far as I can tell, the only console that used this was the TV game 2000K and 3000H, which were by the Commodore Company, which we're going to know about them pretty soon because they release a pretty big computer here coming out pretty soon.
And then next up, we have the MM57100N and the 5710N or 05N chips. Jeez, yep. It's not great. But these were the ones that were used in the Adversary Model 370, which was one of the consoles that we did like. And some of the famous ones that came out for that, or maybe not famous, but some of the ones we wanted to highlight. The Odyssey, back with the 2001. The Vision Score home TV game. The VMV1, the Color Shot home TV game, and the VMV2 by Videomaster, and then also the Color Score by Videomaster.
All these Videomaster ones, I feel like we haven't seen them in a while, and now they're just like dumping it all, and they're all like, how many did they come out with this year? At least like 8 or 10, I want to say.
Yeah, between this and the AY8300.
Yeah. And then finally, or actually, we got two more left, two more kind of groups here. The next one, unknown chips. There's a whole list, again, hundreds and hundreds long, of consoles that I probably had an inkling. I knew what the chip was, because you can kind of tell if you see like a picture of the console, be like, okay, there's 4 games there. It can only be one of like 2 options. But if a source didn't explicitly say what the chip was, or if I found some kind of conflicting information, even if I thought one was wrong, I just put it in unknown because I was like, I don't want to deal with that. There's literally hundreds of these. But there's still some interesting ones in here. There's a couple by Bandai. I have no idea if that's the same Bandai that we know today, but I think it is. They had the TV Jack 1200, 1500, and 3000, which I don't know the chip for. We also had 2 consoles by Intel, which I thought was very interesting. Oh, actually 3 in here. 3 by Intel. And then 1 by JCPenney, which I thought was funny. And then one called, I just like the name of this one, Zonk by PhoneMate.
It is a good name.
Yeah, I like that name.
You gotta imagine it was like a conference room full of the board of directors for this company, and they were just making noises trying to decide what to call their console. Zonk. That's it. We've done it.
They were reading a Dr. Seuss book, and they're like, yeah, this is it.
And then last up for our chips for the consoles that came out in 77, just some other TMS 1955 or TMS 1965 consoles, which the games that use this chip were just the same games that were on the 8500. Just to highlight a very few of them, there was the Adman 2000 and 3000 by Grandstand, and the Hideaway TV game by Sinesta.
Yes. So I hope that wasn't too bad for all of you guys at home, but just a quick recap. AY38500, the MPS 7600, the MM57100, TMS 1955-65. These are all chips that we covered in previous episodes. So people are just like, they're still making the games that use those chips though, and it's all identical to what we've already rated and talked about. So it just wasn't necessary to talk about them again. I do want to mention, I don't think I mentioned this, but some of the color AY38500 stuff was they used the chip 8515, which I think we've mentioned before, but I just wanted to say that unless I forget, in case we missed that. But the color was added because it had an AY38515 chip. That's what did the color. So if you see 8515, now you know what that did. But let's move on now. Let's get out of console land. Thank you for bearing with us through that, because I literally had that was probably like 100 or 200 hours of research just in those couple mentions there, because we didn't mention most of them. But they're gone, and now we have good games to go, or we'll see. This next one's one I did rate. It's a Play-Doh game, and normally I'm really excited about Play-Doh games, but this one not so much. This is actually a collection of a couple games: baseball, NFL, basketball, NBAHoops, and I think football. They're all basically the same game. They're all made by the same guys, Robert North and Thomas Groen. And these came out either in 76 or 77. I'm leaning towards 77, which is why I don't think it's like a retcon per se. But I wanted to put it in early. And this one is kind of a weird one to talk about because the games were apparently made in the 70s, but were only fixed up and put on the Play-Doh network in 2013. So they say by their own admission that the games, when they made them back in the 70s, were a buggy mess. And, they kind of grew up and got jobs and stuff, and they never completed that. And they never fixed, the games to be really playable until 2013, when they're like, oh, let's go back and do this. So it's kind of a hard one to rate because part of it was made just a couple years ago and part of it was made in the 70s, but the games aren't good. So I was like, well, we should cover this now because in 2013 it's really going to be bad. So the reason why I'm rating all these games together, because they are different sports, basketball, baseball, football, is because they're all basically played the same way. How it works is you basically get a very limited option of things to do. So let's take baseball, for example. When you're throwing a pitch in baseball, you can choose to walk if you want. You can choose maybe a type of pitch between like 1 to 3. And then depending on how the batter, like which one of their stances they be in, like it's kind of like a rock, paper, scissors thing, I think, under the hood as to what actually happens. So you have a bunch of options, but there's no I think it'd be impossible to be really good at the game because one of the options always defeats the other one, and you don't really know what the other person picked until it happens. So it's kind of a weird RNG game that is not very fun to play, I'll just say. Wes actually played this one with me, so if you want to say anything, Wes, feel free to hop in anytime, because we could only play it with 2 people. Some of them anyway.
Yeah, based on the system that was running on. But I'll be nodding in the background and I'll chime in if I have anything to say.
Yeah, let's talk about football because that's the one we played together. And I'll use this one as the main one to kind of talk about the ratings and stuff. But let's just get into it because it might be the easiest thing to do. Let's start with sound because that's easy. It's a computer game, has no sound. So 0 out of 10 for sound. For graphics, this is where it gets really weird. The screen is just full of information. It has entire team rosters. It has the score per quarter. It has the time. It has a description of what just happened. It has, for football, it had the current position for each team.
And also where they are on the field and a image of the field itself.
It's just a lot of info. So much so that, and I should put this together with the other thing that we'll talk about when more with gameplay, but the game kind of just goes by itself.
Right.
And you can hop on and try to stop it for a second and make a decision about something. But if you miss your opportunity, it's just going to go. There's no pause button on this. So it's kind of impossible to look at all this information and not miss actually playing the game. You have to sacrifice one for the other. So despite the fact that it has a lot of information, which I usually like information, a lot of it is just kind of garbage information. I don't really need to know my roster. I don't really need to know, what the score was for each quarter or something like that. There's a ton of things that just were taking space that didn't need to be there. And it sacrificed whenever you took your eyes off something to figure out who's got the ball right now, or where are we at on the field, or what down is it. You're looking up and then you're missing actually being able to play the game because it's just happening in the background. So, graphics aren't that good. It's a lot of good detailed info, but a lot of it also is just pointless. And despite the fact that you have a big field and stuff and a view of how the players are lined up, there's no actually player model. It's just a bunch of cylinder kind of looking things. So it's not it looks good either.
Right. It's whiteboard drawings of typical scene of a coach drawing up his play in the locker room or the actual playbooks that they have. It's basically just kind of like a playbook view of it, but with no movement either. It just shows positions, but it doesn't show you where your running back's going to go necessarily.
Yeah, and like it'll be like, the opponent threw a pass for 25 yards, and then you've got a single thing on the very top of the screen that shows that the ball has moved on the total field in football, but there's no movement of players. There's nothing that really tells you, other than a very small thing of text that goes away in like a second, that actually happened, So the graphics don't really help the gameplay at all, and in fact got in the way several times. So for that, I thought just 0.5 out of 10. I'm being harsh today because I don't know why. I don't know, but woke up on the wrong side of the bed now. But it's just not a good looking game. What is there actually confuses me more than helps me. So I thought that definitely was not good. So 0.5 out of 10 for graphics. For gameplay, I gave it 1.5 out of 10. I think that's maybe a little generous, right? Maybe right where it should be. I think it could be fun because you have a lot of options with how you want to play. And like I said, this is kind of a combined score for basketball, baseball, NFL. So those are three big different sports, and there's going to be somebody out there who's interested in at least one of them to play. So you have a lot of options of how you want to play. But I think for all of them, they're all RNG based, and it really doesn't feel like you're really controlling much of anything. So I feel like it's a lot of, what do they call that, like false choice or something like that, where you have a lot of choices, but none of them really mean anything. So thought gameplay, not that great. And the worst thing.
Right. Yeah, I was going to mention if you didn't.
The worst thing is the game is playing in the background, and if you miss your opportunity to like pick a play, it just picks one and goes. And that is so annoying.
Right.
You cannot just like take a break for a second and think about what you're going to do next because it's gone. I mean, It's literally maybe a second you have to pick something.
Yeah, and I think this is because it's at the pace of like whatever the background clock or background ticks are for the Play-Doh system. So if you're imagining like when we were playing, I guess it was Empire 4, where it's like whenever, well, no, that one you had to manually refresh, but any of the ones that automatically refresh, like Panther or something like that, it's every time it would automatically do that world refresh, it would just say like, click this button to do a play, and then like within a second it's gone. So you had to mash the button to be able to actually choose your play for your offensive or defensive play. It's very strange.
Yeah, it was super weird, and we actually couldn't get basketball to run, but baseball and football, they both had that same issue. So I really felt like I could review these two together, especially because they're all by the same dudes. That's how all of them worked. So I really feel like they're more like simulation games, and there's really not much you can do, because even if you do pick a play or pick something, there's no guarantee that that's going to make any positive impact over the simulation. So it's really, their gameplay is really lacking, but you do have a lot of options. It is really in-depth. I mean, the football game had fouls and stuff. With the baseball, you could do walks and a bunch of weird stuff. You could steal bases. So it is like detailed, but I don't think a lot of that detail really mattered when it comes to playing it. And that gives me my relevance score. I gave it a 2 out of 10 for relevance. I really don't think this was relevant because I don't think anybody really knew these existed until 2013 when these guys decided to make it, like, republish these games and fix them. So I don't think that was relevant at all, but I gave it the benefit of the doubt, especially because it's basketball, baseball, football. Those are all very, very common searches, I would imagine, even in Play-Doh systems way back in the day. So if anybody found these, I think it's pretty likely that they would find these games. But I don't know. I couldn't really see it influencing anything further. You know, maybe they knew they existed, but somebody else, when they made the next version of these games, they weren't going to be like, I'm going to do it like they did. It was going to be like, oh, I'm going to do it different.
Right.
So just 2 out of 10 there. And that gives me an overall of 1 out of 10. It's not a good first game of the year, but I purposely kind of, if I'm not quite sure when a game came out, and this one, like I said, came out sometime between 76, 77, I'll put it early in the year, and usually there's the worst kind of games. So at the beginning of 77 here, we might get some bad ones, but hopefully they'll go by fast Wes and I, we both are only rating one game today because we want to go through fast these bad ones and get to the good stuff, which we're going to get to next episode. I'm super excited. I'll talk about it more later, but I'm already excited. So.
Oh yeah, good to hear.
Why don't you get us out of here, Wes?
All right, let's move on. Next up, we have a group of honorable mentions. All of these were basically just clones of Blockade or Co-Motion. So we have Checkmate by Midway, Dominoes by Atari, and Dominoes for Cocktail release by Atari.
That was actually called Dominoes 4, yeah.
Oh, yes,
I guess was their 4-player
Dominoes
version.
4 Cocktail, yeah.
And all those came out in January, which is great. Of those three, by the way, Dominoes actually I think is the worst one. Checkmate actually looked pretty nice. Dominoes look weird. Yeah, let's move on. We're going to end today with a couple computer games. These ones came out January 77 in a series of 8 volumes of basic software. So if you guys remember, we had Basic 101 games way back. This is the same type of stuff, but, it just came out in January 77. So Volume 1 has a couple games. A lot of them we've already seen, though. Stuff like Tank and Cannon are probably the more unique ones, but they're just math angle-based games or kind of like number guessing games. Like I think maybe it was Tank. You were looking for a certain angle, and if you wrote in something that was too high, it'd be like, that's too high. And then you'd go lower and be like, that's too low. And it's like, okay, it's in the middle. So it's basically like a guessing game.
Right. Yeah.
So we didn't really feel the need to cover those. The one that is more unique, I thought this was a brand new one, but it actually was a Basic 101 game called Golf. But this is a kind of new revised version of Golf where it added a couple extra stuff. Like each hole is unique in how it's set up, and they have obstacles on each hole that are unique from hole to hole, which I thought was pretty cool. But the basic gist of the game is you've got a known distance from the hole, and in this case, I think maybe wind and kind of direction as well. You put in what club you want, you select what percentage of a full swing you're going to do, and you just try to play through the game. So I thought it was a kind of cooler, slight improvement of Golf, but unfortunately these Basic 101 games, we can't really play them unless there's like a nice version of the code somewhere, but there is no good version of this code that I could do. Right. I could maybe try to code it myself, but that seems very difficult. So I was like, it's not worth it for Golf.
Yeah.
This one, I mean, it's basically the same game that was one that came out in like 75, so it can't be like that amazing. But beyond that, that was Volume 1. Volume 2 and 3 had no games in them, so Wes, why don't you continue with Volume 4 now?
Yeah, so Volume 4 of this set was called the General Purpose Volume, came out in January of 77 as well. It also had a lot of duplicate games like Cubic and reprints of like some other basic games that we've seen a lot, but it did have one that we wanted to point out that was pretty interesting called Bull, which was a text game where you're a matador and you basically have, I think it was like 3 different options for how to swirl your cape or do more dangerous moves each time the bull ran past you, and you get more praise from the crowd the braver you are and the riskier moves you do. And there's a set number of turns, I think, that the bull goes past you, and the longer it goes, the better chance you also have of just like straight up killing the bull, which I don't know much about bullfighting and all that, and I know it's not a good thing for bulls, but I didn't think they just like straight up killed them. But
oh yeah, they do. They do, Wes.
That's brutal. God,
it's pretty messed up. Yeah, I don't understand why you would take a family to something like that, but they do. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very strange. Different cultures, I guess, and all that, but it seems a little weird.
It's okay. The bulls get their revenge in that race of the bulls, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And in this game, if you try to kill the bull on turn 1, it just instantly gores you, no matter what, as far as I can tell. Or you might have like a 5% chance. Right. So that one's slightly different.
Yeah, that one actually I looked up, and it's a Basic 101 game as well that came out in like 75, but it's kind of a more rare one. I don't think we've seen it before, so I like how they included it in here. I thought it was a good kind of reprint. But as far as I can tell, they didn't add anything new. Moving on, we have a couple of other ones actually. This Volume 4, General Purpose, it got quite a few games that we thought were kind of interesting. The next one here is called Football, another football one. Probably one that's even better than the one I played, even though mine had graphics and stuff. But essentially, it's a text version of football, so purely text. And you get to pick between 14 offensive plays, and the defense can pick between 4 different defensive alignments. And depending on what one person picks, a certain result occurs. So it's essentially like the game I played, pretty much an RNG game. Again, this one is pretty well detailed, though. It's got rosters, it's got teams, it's got kickoffs, it's got fouls, it's got field goals. So it's pretty well detailed, but no emulation for that. Again, I wasn't going to program it up. So another basic one-on-one game, but I thought it was an interesting one that they included. And then the last one, the last one of the day, Wes, you rated this one, and I think it's genuinely like unique to this basic software library volumes. So why don't you talk to us about Go-Moku?
Yes, so I'm going to talk about Go-Moku, which was in this same volume. Just to give some basic history on it, it is a board game that was adapted to be a text game in this basic software. It was based on the Chinese game of Go, but I think it's a Japanese adaptation of the game, as far as I could tell. It's played on a Go board, which is usually a 15 by 15 board, but for the purposes of this game and probably also so that they could code it easier, this version of Go-Moku was on a 9 by 9 board. And the translation of Go-Moku is basically along the lines of line up 5 pieces, because there's a full name, and I think Go means 5 and Moku means pieces, and there was another bit on the end that meant like line them up. And it makes sense because that's how you win the game. Basically, you get 5 pieces either vertically, horizontally, or diagonally in a row. And when I was reading through this, there's some interesting things with the board game version of it, where there's a swap rule that you can play, where the first player actually sort of like establishes the board state by putting down 2 black pieces and 1 white piece. And then the second player can either place 1 piece and then choose which color they want to be, or place 2 pieces down and then let the first player choose which color they want to be. So it's an interesting idea to sort of eliminate games like this, which is sort of expanded tic-tac-toe, if you think about it that way. A lot of them have that either first or second turn bias. So it's kind of helps make it more fair that way, which makes sense because there also is a world championship of Go-Moku that is still currently yearly being played, I think. And there's also another house rule that people do sometimes of you can either win by exactly 5 in a row or decide that you could win with 6 or 7 in a row as well. So basically, it's like tic-tac-toe, and in a similar vein to that, you can use algorithms to decide, 50 moves down the line, what you should play if the other person you're playing does this. So I couldn't play, and for going forward for the rest of this review, I couldn't play the original version, as we said with a lot of these basic ones. We don't want to make Ben do all that coding, and I have too much Animal Crossing to play, so I'm definitely not going to do it.
I don't even know if I could do it if I tried. I've tried several of these basic one-on-one games to code, and I would say 9 times out of 10, I cannot get them to run. So I'm just not going to do that anymore.
At this point, not worth the effort for it.
Unless there's there might be videos of somebody playing it or something like that, and we could take a look at that, but it's hard to get our own emulators working for these basic games.
Right. And I took a basic look at no pun intended, basic look at the code that was provided in this volume, and it looked like it was sort of just a computer does this. What do you do?
Yeah.
So what we did to be able to rate this one is Ben was kind enough to find a iOS version of Go-Moku that had an option for a 9 by 9 board. So I played that on my phone for a little bit. And so this version, when it was programmed for a computer, was played on a 9 by 9 board. Basically, you take turns by placing down pieces until someone gets 5 in a row. This version was played against a computer. It wasn't 2-player, and it was a text game, as I mentioned. And one thing which I'll expand on in my ratings, but it didn't have any of the advanced rule options for the swap rule that I was talking about, or to make it so you could win by more than just exactly 5, which I thought was a little weird. The app might have, but I'm kind of using the app to talk about this one that was written in the basic code.
Mm-hmm.
So getting into my ratings for it, the sounds, of course, 0 out of 10, no sounds for this. For graphics, I gave it a 0.5 out of 10. It's a simple text game, but at least it does show you sort of what the board looks like after every turn, so that's good. Kind of shows you where everything's located. Gameplay, I gave it a 1 out of 10. I want to say at the start that this isn't really my type of game, so I could be a little extra harsh on it. I don't really like checkers, tic-tac-toe, Connect 4, anything like that, and this kind of feels like all of those jammed into one. But even trying to put my biases aside when I'm looking at this, I don't think it's a particularly fun version of this game. It was
The
just
9x9 version?
well, the computer 9x9 version.
Oh.
It just seemed like another board game made into a computer game to show, hey, look, a computer can do this, but it's probably something that's a lot more fun as a board game.
Right.
So it's interesting that a computer could do all these moves, but for me, not super fun. I kind of need some extra variables like the swap thing or the options for being able to have different win conditions to keep it interesting for me. And for that, it didn't really have anything. So for my relevance for this, I gave it a 6 out of 10. I definitely think it played a role in developing AI in games in sort of the iterative way that we're seeing all these games being shown and saying like, hey, look, this is what a computer can do now. And this being a game that we haven't really seen before, it might reach a different crowd than say like, hey, look, this can play Hex Pawn. This is saying like, hey, look, this can play Go-Moku. So for people who are interested in Go-Moku, it might be like, oh, hey, it's awesome that computers can do it. So I think it's cool in that aspect of it and has some relevance there. But I don't think it really did anything to distinguish itself other than that. So it's not like, people aren't looking back at this version of Go-Moku and being like, yeah, that's what got me started in creating Mass Effect 3. But not that I should draw that line anyway. So for my overall rating for this, I just gave it a 1 out of 10. I'm glad it's not tic-tac-toe because we've seen so much tic-tac-toe, but it's basically just longer tic-tac-toe, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it has like Connect 4 vibes for me. It actually has a lot of Go vibes, both because aesthetically, it's played on Go board and use Go chips, but I think also how you play it is kind of like Go a little bit. But it's definitely one of these like games that I think is a lot more complicated than you first think when you load it up.
Yeah, it's also one that I think just doesn't translate to not having visuals, or at least, I mean, this had the printouts after each turn, but not that sort of like constant visual reminder of the board state and being able to plan. And I think it benefits a lot from that. Like the app version I played was pretty cool, and it definitely had a lot of playability there, although I did take it off my phone shortly after reviewing it. But that was interesting, and also the visual kind of giving you the vibe of the game of Go. But for this, when it's just programmed into BASIC, it didn't really keep my attention for too long. So right. Yeah, that's Go-Moku, the basic software version.
Yeah, I do want to say I have found a Go-Moku version from 75, but I think it says the game board is anywhere from 19 by 19 to 7 by 7, depending on the size of your computer, it says.
Oh, so, okay.
I like that this one is like, we're going to do 9 by 9, but we're going to do it good,
Right.
I think it is a better version of Go-Moku that we haven't really seen before, because this one, I don't know. I don't trust it, Wes. I'll say that much. So, yeah. And that'll do it for us today, guys. Thank you for listening through all of those consoles. You have no idea how much we covered today. How many different consoles and games we covered, but it was a lot. And next week, we're going to start it with an actual good series. I hope it's going to be the second generation console to hit the market, the RCA Studio 2. We're going to cover next week. And yeah, I'm really excited. It's the first of many second-gen console games we're going to cover. The Fairchild is going to keep making games all throughout the year, so I'm super excited about that. And then obviously we also have one more. Can you guess it, Wes?
Oh, the Atari 2600.
Oh, yes. And I haven't even spoiled myself to look at what the games look like because I'm just so confident that it's going to be good. So hopefully they will be. But yeah, we're going to be doing that next time.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff to look forward in 77. As always, make sure to check us out on Twitter. Send us an email if you have any questions, and take a look at our website too to get some information of some of the episodes that we've done in the past.
Yes, and check out Night Driver, which I think we'll say was Wes and I's #1 game of the year. So
definitely,
combined score.
Yes,
so
yeah. Round it out a little bit.
Check it out. So yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
See you guys next time.